Okay, cool. I'm wondering if this is working. Neat. Get something in, I guess. Alright, cool. So I'm gonna do a little test. If anybody joins, let me know how it sounds. We'll start it off with Matt's tunes. Let's take a listen. Alright, sounds sick. Maybe hearing some like a little too much saturation on the high end. Cool little break. Yeah, cool tune. I like the ideas. I'm thinking maybe around this part, I'm hearing like the side chaining sounds sick on the vocals and everything, but maybe you can reduce it a little bit during this part where everything's breathing. It sounds like maybe it's pumping a little too much there. I'm hearing um like too much saturation, like in the mastering stage. Either you're running it into the limiter or flipper a bit too hard. Because also it looks like we're going above 0 on the track, overall track level here. So I think that might be adding some kind of oversaturation because it is pretty loud. So if we look at like the meter, you're hovering around -6, which is really competitive. So I feel like you could dial it back a little bit and like maybe aim between -7 and -8 to get rid of some of that like oversaturation that's happening. Not sure if it's like my system, but what I'm hearing is definitely maybe too much saturation. But that's a little bit more of a mastering perspective right there. Yo, there we are. Oh no! No audio from the tracks? Okay, I'm glad you're here, dude. Let me see. Okay, so the voice is coming through, but this is... Oh, let's see. So I'm using Streamlabs. Worked before when I was testing stuff, but... Black device. Okay. This might be a full testing live stream then, like just trying to get audio to work. Let me see. So on Mac, I'm using something annoying called Audio MIDI, this like black hole thing. Work. Hmm. Okay, weird. So the voice works, but the audio does. Click this. Properties. Yo, yeah. It should be this. Blah, blah, blah. Track is sick though. It's the On My Mind one. But only I can hear it. Wonder. Let's do something like annoying. Oh yeah, audio output. I switched multi-out device. Boom. If you're still there, you hear now? Looks like I'm seeing it coming in. That work? feel like it's working. Okay, I'm gonna assume it is and keep going. But yeah, this is a tune from my buddy Matt. I think, is this you and Chris? Is Fluent you and Chris? Regardless, sick producer, sick DJ from back at home, like Mississauga, Streetsville area. Let's keep listening to this tune. Okay, structure is cool too. Honestly, this sounds sick. Drums sound good. Like very well put together. I'm wondering if maybe the kick and bass can come up a little bit, but that could be just preference or my speakers. Let's keep listening through. And I really like that kind of hooks, like the chopped up male and female vocals. Maybe could get like a little space here, like adding some kind of like no, pretty spacey. So like maybe some like extra reverb. A little like false start. I think that sounded pretty cool. It might sound cool if you can hear there's like a little bit of that like synth coming through. It might sound cool if it was just the hey, so like it's very much like everything gets cut out but just the hey, so you can really focus on that, and then so there's a stronger contrast, and then when everything kicks in, it hits maybe a little harder. It's something to try there. What you might want to try is you hear like the energy from like this drop before the breakdown is a little higher than this. You might want to look into making this drop hit a little harder by maybe adding in back in that ride, which is definitely bring up the energy quite a bit. This could be a personal preference, but this is something I always like to do. So like the kind of the energy is constantly building, and that way like after the main big drop, it's going into like the final drop, and that's like all intents and purposes like the climax of like the song or like the movie, like the final act. So I usually I prefer to have things hit like the hardest at this point. So like yeah, just maybe coming in with like giving it everything you got is a suggestion there. And it sounds like it still sounds nicely. Cool. What you might want to do as a suggestion, and like maybe try playing it out a bunch of times, because this is definitely good enough to be played out. You might want to remove a bit more of the vocal information here, just so that it gives like DJs the opportunity to start bringing in some other melodic elements during this point in time. generally I'm seeing a lot of, like, as I'm doing like track breakdowns or track remakes, the build down section of the tune is usually quite stripped back. Like it might sound, let me see if yours, maybe a little bit more stripped back, almost like this, but maybe even less than that. Just give like the DJ more of an opportunity to get some stuff out there, mix in the next track. Cool. But then also, if you were doing like a Spotify release or something, I feel like all this would be fine because it's a lot more attention grabbing and sick. Okay, so main thing is like this song is fucking sick. The hook is awesome. Drums seem well put together. Bass. Little basic. Maybe that's just me. Like you might want to try like making it so it's more similar to like almost a bass guitar. Like there's like a little bit of movement happening, but it's still sick. Does the job. The main thing is it's making room for the hooks, which you've definitely really nailed there. That cool like vocal chop up thing is super cool. Again, that kind of like hip house vibe down really well. That's awesome. Main thing though is definitely like if you're looking at like the meters, you're loud as hell. So like -6, -7 is like really competitive, like probably more competitive than you like even need to be. And I think hitting that loudness target, I'm hearing quite a bit of saturation that over crisp high end. So I think dialing that back, whether you have a saturation plugin on the master, you can dial it back there. If you have it in several places within the track, then maybe just dialing it a bit on track or bus or group or whatever you're doing, just some effort to kind of reduce that amount of saturation. It could just be you're just driving it really intensely into the limiter, and just dialing it back. I would say aiming for like -7, -8. -8's pretty fucking good, and that should allow you like to have still a very loud competitive master without as much saturation. But yeah, sick song. And check if there's, okay, cool. Move on to the next one. I know another one of Matt's. This one's called Snoop. Oh, very different vibe. A little vocal cut up kind of thing. Bass. A little synth thing. Nice little adding left and right. Chopping up his too. Yeah, nice.
When the pimp's in the crib, ma, drop it like it's hot, drop it like it's hot, drop it like it's hot. When the pigs try to get at you, park it like it's hot, park it like it's hot.
Okay, so this one, there's some cool ideas here. I don't know, like maybe even just listening to these back and forth, the other one hits right away. It sounds like way more put together. Everything sounds really balanced. This one's sounding a bit more stripped back, almost like muted. Like I'm hearing like a bit more. We're not running into that same saturation issue, and the loudness is still pretty good, but it still feels quieter and less impactful. Something about the balance is different. Like if we listen to this tune, sounds a lot balanced. There's the saturation issue. This sounds almost like muffled. So there might be check to see if you have like multiple basses, if like, or just each layer is like operating in its frequency area. So like the bass is taking care of the bass end, the synths. See if you're like rolling any highs off of anything, because it sounds very muffled. Keep listening through. Get me over here. This is sounding a bit nicer. Like think that like top loop that gets added is really helping kind of balance things out. Yeah, it sounds a lot better when a lot of the elements get introduced here. Back in the intro, it's like maybe too subdued. Something about it. Like over here, I think, yeah, once you're starting to add in a lot of these extra elements, it's sounding a lot more balanced. Some of the saturation kind of issues that I was hearing in the previous track is kind of coming in a little bit here in that high end.
See these ice cubes, see these ice creams, eligible bachelor, $1 million boat. That's whiter than what's spilling down your throat. I can exercise you, this could be your phys ed. Cheat on your man.
Cool kind of sections and like playing to the song's like natural verse chorus kind of structure.
Don't try to run up on my head talking all that raspy shit. Trying to ask me shit. When my niggas feel your best, they ain't gonna pass me shit. You should think about it. Take a second. Matter of fact, you should take 4B.
I like that.
My niggas feel your best, they ain't gonna pass me shit. You should think about it. Take a second. Matter of fact,
that I like that a lot.
You should take 4B and think before you fuck a little skateboard beat.
Yeah, so some cool ideas here. Definitely a different vibe. Something about this isn't hitting as hard as like the previous track that you had. Something about the balance. Feels like the kick could be maybe louder. Yeah, something about this, it feels like it needs like a bottom up like remix in terms like a not a remix but like a mix it up from like get everything down to fader 0, have like a reference track that you're building against, then bring up each fader one by one, starting with like the kick and the drums and everything to get that sounding as full and nice as possible. And then do like a full remix on this one. It might be a demo. Do you have any thoughts on? Yeah. Something about it, yeah. Like it is cool. There's some cool ideas. It's just sounding a little bit like muffled and like clarity isn't there. Like each section isn't working in its own frequency range. Which is to say, like, I feel like you nailed it on this one though. It sounds like, I mean, like maybe you can even like tell. Like listen to this. And then even if we jump to like a section here, still sounding louder. Just this, yeah, I feel like it's maybe missing some elements, maybe in the mid range. But just, yeah, it's hard to say on that one. The other one you nailed. Hopefully some of the feedback I gave on the second one was useful. Yeah, gonna move on from that one. But this first one is really sick. I would say this one's like a keeper for sure, the On My Mind one. If you're not playing it out yet, definitely start trying that one out in sets. We're gonna move on to my buddy Foytek's track. I think he actually released anyways, but we'll give him some feedback. Let's have a listen. More chill, classic house vibes. Classic house vibes. Little jazzy ride. Pad. Bass. Cool. Funk's still building, but we can probably get louder on the master, but let's see where we get. Everything comes in. Cool. Something about the clap is sounding like maybe a different, like trying different samples for that. Kind of sounds like it's not fitting in with the rest and being as impactful as it could be. Here, might want to like what's it called? High pass the kick a little bit. Get rid of like some of the lows on it. Make this drop in energy even further. Like this almost something about this part here to me when the kick comes in, it almost sounds like a drum like intro or outro. Like it's almost like something about it. It's like reducing the energy in like a way that it's almost sounds like the song's about to end. When you want it to feel like it's gonna keep going and there's more to happen. I feel like just like almost like if you were mixing it live and you just pulled the filter to the right, that energy I think would be kind of cool. Or even just extending this out here. So if it's like this was looping, and then it just went, yeah, something like that. Let's skip through. Okay, cool. Let's hear pretty good on the. I would say that's pretty nice in terms of the loudness on this track once everything's hitting. Here. So how that we have this open hat here. One, I think that you might want to play with tightening up that sound. So you could either like play with the ADSR, so like reduce the sustain or the release, so it's just a little tighter, or if you throw a transient shaper and pull the sustain back a little bit, it just sounds a little too like loose. Tighter is usually a bit better with drums. I think that'd make it sound a little bit more tighter, more professional there. And then also like the energy that's adding. Having something like that here, like it's cool. Like I really like the kind of like stereo panned hi-hats and rides that's going on there, but at some point it might be nice to have a closed hat doing this typical like 4 on the floor pattern, like the offbeat, that's having that in here somewhere at some point to increase the energy, unless you want it to be super chill, which would be fine, but that would be something I would do if I was on this track. Couple of break. This lead is cool, but something about it sounds out of place, or like it's not blending in. It might just have a little bit too much low end, and it might be a little bit too much up front. So you might want to play with like cutting out some of the lows with a high pass filter. Always making room for all the other stuff that like the bass that's actually taking care of the low end, and then maybe spacing it out a little bit. So in terms of like bass, like putting it in a space, so adding some reverb, some delay, so it's kind of like blending in everything a little bit more. It would also make the sound a little bit more interesting too, with kind of ping-pongy left and right delay like that. Yeah, maybe a little bit too much low end in that lead. Here again, I'm feeling like the kick. She also. I feel like the kick could be a little bit louder, mixed louder. Maybe bring up a little bit of the bass with it. Then here, these sections. Again, I would probably try high passing out some of the lows of the kick. But also, wait, this is the outro, is it? Not quite, yeah. So some of these parts where it sounds like it's the outro of the song, maybe that's a personal preference of mine, but I would maybe do something like filter out the low end of the kick. It sounds more like a transition breakdown than the end of the tune. Nice little extra synth that comes in. Nice volume on that. And again, maybe having that closed hat, doing the off hat pattern, the energy up, and then slowly like reduce it as you're bringing it down, and then just a drum outro. So I think you maybe have that. Yeah, maybe just a drum outro would be nice. So just the drums, just for DJs to be able to play out. But 6th song otherwise. Really, I think the coolest thing is the pad. The pad is really cool and like wavy and chillin'. That's sick. Alright, and then one more. Do one more. Make sure everything's in the hood. Nice. This one is from Rob. Hearing a saturation kind of thing going on again, but nice. Holy crap, that sounds sick as hell. I like this kind of like little arrangement thing you did where the bass comes in, but it's not fully there, and then when it comes in here, like full subversion. Sick. Like all the ear candy. I really like all the ear candy. These might be a little too boomy, like maybe there's a little bit too much on the sub. You want to maybe dial that back a little bit. Make sure you compare it against like a track you like, and as long as it's close to that, then you're fine. You can ignore me. Same thing I'm kind of hearing the other track. Again, this might be personal preference, but not a big fan of when like in the middle of the song it sounds like the song's about to end. Like this could be the end of the song easily, and you're about to mix it out. So like, yeah, it's just maybe too much of a drop in like melodic content. Or if you like, I think let's hear how the second half sounds of this.
Is my sway. All the girls are on me. Damn.
I would probably say keep the bass on here and then low pass on the entire channel. So almost like if it was like this. EQ8. I feel like this would sound cooler. So imagine this is like this part, and then instead of this part here, something like this.
All the pretty girls stand up.
And it went to here.
Right here is my
A little more interesting. It doesn't sound like the song's about to end. It's just like
damn.
lets the listener know something is about to change. That previously I feel like indicates the song's about to end.
Right here is
That's
my
fucking sick.
pretty boy swag.
Cool piano thing. Let's listen to that again.
Attention. This right here is my pretty boy swag.
Sick. Love that. I'd add the bass back in, do maybe that kind of like low cut thing. Let's hear this drop.
Is my pretty boy swag.
Cool little synth that was added. That thing. Cool, like panning. It sounds spatially like it's part of the tune. The pianos. Very cool, like it's like a nice simple everything with these nice ear candy bits.
Get out the way. Pretty boy coming through. Me
Cool.
and my crew, we swaggin' in the room. Girls on me heavy cause I look so sexy. Yellow diamond shawty in that club straight flexing. I'm looking for a yellow bone, long hair star.
Yeah,
Big
with the-
in the hips, come get in my car.
This is
So
cool.
the party's with a star.
Not
We
full
take
fat
off and go
kick.
to Mars.
The
Big
vocal
boy take
going
off
over,
and
it
bar.
sounds like
3,
we're taking a break and about to go back into something. Let me hear.
Pretty boy coming through.
You might want to try impacts on like the beginning of your hits. So like this. That one kind of sounds cool if you like pay attention to like the reverse crash.
3, 2, 1.
So since the reverse crash kind of like ends on the high note, it sounds like almost like a impact. And what I mean by that would be almost like if you're imagining a drummer in a band, usually at the beginning of phrases or sections like that, they'll kind of do a big full crash. So you can like emulate that, and I feel like it really helps tie sections, transitions together. So you can either do like crash hitting, so it's almost like, I don't know if my voice is going to be on time with this, but like something like that. So you can do a crash. Different crashes can work really nicely, and then you could also do like you can take like a riser sound that you might get in like a sample pack, and then reverse it so it's going down, or down lifter, I think I've been hearing them called, stuff like that. Something to kind of like really show that this is the beginning of a new section. Helps make them also hit a little bit harder. Something like that can be cool though, to not have it hit on something like that. Like that. How you just had that psh, having that on other sections too really can help. Cool. I like the little kick fill. Sounds like something's missing here. Either like kind of like a reverby, kind of splashy, endless smile thing. So this is what I usually like to use. Endless smile, and I've just mapped a couple of different like of these little preset-y one knobby things, different versions here, to a rack, and so you can do something like this. Something like that. So that like some kind of like riser, or like having like reverb or delay swelling it. Doesn't have to be a typical riser like that. Sometimes that can sound so like corny and cheesy, but like something to kind of fill things out. Even adding like a pad or something just sounds a little too bare, I would say. Cool. We'll just kind of jump through. Curious why you're not ending it around here. This might be a little too long. Not too much going on here. I feel like you could consider like building it down, going into a drum outro. Let's see what else you got here. And then we got the classic drum outro. So maybe it goes a little too long here. Nothing too crazy going on here. So you might want to consider shortening it. But yeah, other than that, it's pretty cool. There's a couple of opportunities to like add maybe a little bit of something extra going on in some of the transitions that I mentioned, or impacts. And then I think in terms of loudness, you're pretty good. Just maybe I think you could also back off the limiter again. If you're like hitting around -6 short term, it's loud, it's super competitive. You're just getting a little bit of saturation, I feel like you could hear in the high end. So just dialing it back a little bit should clear that up. I think that's pretty good. Hey, cool. Daniel, thank you for all that. Nice raccoon. I saw 4 raccoons in the backyard yesterday. That's cool. Okay, and I think that's good. I'm gonna let me know how this is, even if you comment on like the replay of this. Kind of feel like I don't know what I'm doing with track feedback in live streams, so any feedback would be good because it's useful and get better at it than I'd like to. I'm gonna do one last little thing, like almost a live tutorial. I want to show off the the template that I've been doing, because I've been changing that quite a bit. So I wanted to take a moment to go into that. So I'm just gonna do a new live set. I'm not gonna save this. I will save it for the memories. So opening up a new live set, this is what my starter template looks like whenever I'm building new tracks. So there's a couple things that I've been kind of working on here that are making this pretty special and helping me finish off. So we'll just move through the top to the bottom. So first thing is I always have an arrangement track set up with like a typical song arrangement with these empty MIDI clips: intro, sub, break, drops, breaks, drops, build down, outro. And then what I have here is a spot for the reference track. So I make sure I don't have too much going on here in terms of like any processing. I want the track to sound as clean as possible. I just have a spectrum so I can kind of have a look at any of the frequencies and how the overall track looks. It can be useful. And then what I've been doing lately is making sure that the reference track is -6 decibels reduced. This way, what I've been finding, before I had it at 0 and I was everything to 0 and I was running into like crazy or saturation problems. So this is helping contain that quite a bit. And then one of the first things I'll do is once I drop the reference track in here, I'll work with this arrangement track here. Almost use this as like a little puzzle piece, moving things around, shortening sections, elongating sections, whatever. This way I have the reference in here nice and set up, and I have this arrangement track with these empty MIDI clips color coded so I can jump between sections of the reference really quickly. It's particularly useful, say, when I'm building up the drums. I'll usually look for the intro and like kind of set up a loop marker here and build out the drums against the intro or against the outro. So we're kind of really focusing on that. Speaking of drums, the next thing that I have set up is this drum group. So there's a couple things going on here. First is on the group. What I've been really loving is this compressor and this K-clip. So I have the compressor turned off. Usually what I'll do is build the track, and then near more the mixing stage, I'll flick this on. And basically, it's really cool. There's like a AI-ish element to it. So I'll just hit magic, and then I'll select drums, and then either do moderate or gentle, and it'll listen to the drums and set up the compressor settings. And then from there, you can just kind of dial it in as you. This is helping reduce the dynamic range. And something I've been also trying to do quite a lot lately is less layers, but make it still sound full. So compressor really helps with that, kind of like the subtle details of the track, kind of glues things together also. And this way you can get a lot more out of less. And then I'm always running into a K-clip, and with this I'll be adjusting the input so that I'm getting about a decibel clipped. One thing I've been doing too is playing between the smooth, tube, and tape presets. Just a way to add like this nice like saturation, which can also make it sound a bit more aggressive, or add some nice character to the drums as well. Then moving on, I usually don't touch any of this. Then once I start building up the track, this is generally the kind of layout I'll usually do. So I'll start with the kick, move down to the open hat, etc., etc., etc. But it's possible to move it around. What I have set up here is a couple of things. I've set up each one of these elements, so the kick, hat, and snare. So they already have like the most typical kind of pattern set up, so that I can really quickly get to working on the tune. So over here on the kick, most tracks are going to have the 4 on the floor, right? So I have it set up so that this is already there for me, and I can move on really quickly. In terms of what I have on the actual channel strip, what I have is this little selector. So once I build out, I have like a bunch of different kick samples in here. I can switch between it like this if I'd like to, as well as jumping into the actual clip. And I only have one thing set up here. So what I've been doing a lot, and you've probably been watching the videos for a while, is stealing the kick sample from the reference, and then also using it like similar sound function, so I can find similar sound that sounds similar to that stolen kick. So what I have here is this R kick thing, and basically once I steal the kick, I'll slap it into here. And then one thing that's been really cool, I think I found from Production Live or something, what you can do is instead of just having the rolling off the high end, so like if you look at the frequency here, right here, if you're pulling this back and you don't have the filter to envelope set up, it's just going to be a classic kick filter. It's going to just basically roll off a lot of the high end. So what you want to do there is like try to remove hi-hats or melodic elements so you just have the kick by itself. If you turn on this filter to envelope thing, which I believe is under controls, an envelope, yeah, turn on the filter envelope and increase the amount, it's going to make the filter like move in this envelope style. And so this way it's removing the high end in a way that gets rid of the hi-hats and cymbals and snares or whatever there might be, in a way that's more natural sounding and preserves a lot of like the kick power, which is nice. And something that I might do sometimes is introduce this volume to velocity. It just makes it sound a little bit harder. And then there's some options for transposing it right within here. If I need to make that kick go up or down, increase the drive, adjust the level, anything like that, it's all within there. And then I have it set up so that there is an EQ 8 on here with nothing set up really. And the main thing is I have this set up here. So if you see the 1, it's disabled. I have this here so that I can easily go like this or adjust it in like the automation lane. That to kind of create that like transition. So like, or like when the break comes in, but you want the kick there, but you don't want the kick hitting fully. This is set up to be able to like just quickly automate that feature of the which almost happens in every song I'm noticing, at least that I'm building. Can very quickly kind of do those micro transitions or macro transitions where you're dropping out the low end of the kick without having to throw on an EQ8 and everything like that. It happens almost every time, so I set up the template to always do that. And then I've been really liking this drum bus, so running the kick into a drum bus. Usually I pull down the saturation. I might dampen it a bit, but the main thing I like adding in boom, which adds almost like a sub sound below the kick, which could sound a lot fuller and more professional. Then if we look at the open hat, what I have here is the classic kind of like hat pattern, and I've set it up so the velocities are changing. So first hit's a bit harder, second's a little softer, harder, softer. Adds a humanization, kind of more dynamic feel to things automatically without having to do this each time. And then I have it so the pattern's already set up ready to go. And then for the hats, I've been finding like the kick is so important to the tune, so I'm finding like stealing it and finding a similar sound is very important, getting something unique each time. But I'm finding kind of open hats and closed hats, some snares and claps, it's not as useful. So what I've done is I went through the process of like finding in my library a bunch of samples that I really like for the open hat here, and then also included one of those kind of like the things I just showed you with the kick, the option to drop in a stolen version and try to filter it out and use a stolen open hat as well. Same thing's going on here with the closed hat. Oh, and then in terms of any processing, then I have the standard channel strip that I usually do. So removing some of the lows automatically. Usually everything below 200 hertz I usually like to get rid of. That low end is up by the kick and the bass, but it's not always the case, right? So this way it's happening automatically, and very quickly I can just grab this and either dial it back a bit if I want to introduce more bass, or if I want to get rid of even more, then it's just already there ready to go, and that move is ready to move. Then I have this transient shaper, a side chain and gain and width, and these are all turned off so I can turn them on as I need them. The transient shaper, as I've been mentioning in a lot of the videos, is the free kilohertz transient shaper, just with like the main components mapped. This is really useful for a lot of the drums because then you can quickly tighten up the sound with the sustain. Sometimes you can increase the attack if you need to, make it hit a little harder, but usually this is here to just dial back the sustain. Then we got the sidechain, not useful on a lot of the drums, more on like the top loops, but it is here if it's needed, and it's a one knobber. And then the Ableton saturation, which I usually will introduce some saturation to kind of fill out the sound a little bit, add a little grit and texture to the sound. And then sometimes this width plugin, which again is the free Polyverse wider plugin with the main components mapped to an Ableton rack, so I can quickly push the sound to left and right, make it more stereo, whatever's in the middle. This kind of comes into play. I like a lot with the claps. You can push the claps left and right, and then the snare down the center. We'll get to in a moment. So then moving on to the closed hat, it's set up so again the pattern you're probably going to start off with is there, ready to go for you. Moving on to the snare, the classic snare pattern, so on the 2 and the 4, the 2 and the 4, the MIDI's already set up ready for you. That way you're just flicking between the sounds or using that selector. Same thing with the clap. This typical pattern's there for you automatically, so you don't have to punch it in every single time. So we have that there, and then I usually have room for a top loop. Jump in here. In terms of the processing, just the classic the classic channel strip, but I have the sidechain like ready to start just in case. The clap students, everything like this, I have that turned off. It's usually not going to happen, but it's there if I need it. And then the ride, again, on that classic pattern. So if I do want to introduce a ride, it's there with a couple of samples that I would like to use. And again, with the clap and the snare, I've built a small little library there. So not having to find claps every time from the full browser. And then another ride, which is like more of a looped ride that I like. So that way I can choose between the different rides if I want to introduce a ride. Then we're running into the next thing, which is a bass. So for this, what I like is very similar. We have that compressor turned off but ready to go, so I can just go to Magic, select the bass, and then listen to it. We're running to a K-clip, running to a similar thing, going about a decibel clipped. We're building it out. In terms of the actual bass here, what I have is the V-sub that I've been using. It's just a Ableton operator device, mainly just running a sine wave. Sine wave is the most purest form of like a wave, which gives you like the most purest form of like of the low end, which is super useful for the sub. It doesn't have to be anything crazy like that. And then just some options back and sustain, I believe, on another one of these transient shaper kilohertz things if needed. And then I have the one knob sidechain also set up here. So the sub with just one device here, we can play with the sidechain on that. Just volume, so that you can adjust the volume of the track without fucking around on the actual channel here. Channel right here. And then this like frequency roll off. So I have an auto filter here, and if you can see here, you can easily just pull it down with the device to remove some of the high end if you want to. Make room for maybe the mid bass, or if you're going for like a really just subtle subby low end, it's all here ready to go for you. And then in terms of the MIDI, I just have it set up so that there's an empty MIDI clip here, so that I don't have to like, you know, go like this and then right click and insert MIDI clip or remember the thing. There's already something here ready to go for me, which is nice. It's just all about speeding things up. And then within this bass group, I have things set up for like the 2 layers, so like sub and mid bass layer. So what I have is this secondary channel, which is set up so that it's automatically instead of all ins, it's coming from the subs like this. So this way, when I write a bass line on the sub channel, that MIDI is automatically going to be routed into the mid bass, so that I don't have to like go like this and have 2 layers of MIDI. This way, as I'm building up the song, if I make any changes to this layer, then it's automatically going to be reflected in the mid bass layer. The main thing is that you got to set it up so that all ins is set up to sub layer, and then instead of auto, it's set to in, so you can actually hear what's happening there. Then on that mid bass layer, I have this pitch device, so that if the sub, like the bass line that I'm writing, sounds really good at a certain octave on the subs, I can easily dial it, but that octave doesn't sound good on the mid bass layer. It's maybe way too low or way too high. There's an Ableton pitch device, so it's gonna move the MIDI up and down by an octave, just like this, instead of actually moving like the audio up and down. So it's literally just moving the MIDI, so it's gonna be nice and clean. Then I'm running that into this bass guitar that I sampled from like Trillion, which is like the Omnisphere bass EST. So basically, I just sampled a bunch of like C notes in that plugin. There's a bass guitar like preset that I really like, and I didn't want to load up Trillion every single time. It's just like a heavier plugin, so I just sampled it, threw it into an Ableton sampler, and this way there's a couple things going on. Like I can tighten up the sustain a bit really easily to try to make it blend in a little bit more, get it tighter with the sub. Something I might do here, and then also having the SMP distortion unit, and then I can add in some saturation this section, which I like the sound of. Then really big important thing when you're doing like the sub and mid bass kind of trick is having EQ rolling off some of the lows. So I basically have it at 200 hertz, and I've ducked the Q a little bit. This is generally where I like it, and this way I don't have to do all these moves every single time. I write the sub bass line, the bass guitar sound I like is already in there, already cutting up to the lows. If it's too the octave isn't right, I can quickly attach it there, There's an option to use that kind of transient shaper. There's an option to make the width, play with the width there, and then the sidechain's already dialed in so that it's pumping nicely. So this is something I'd really recommend, because whether you have your own sub sound and maybe you have your own mid bass layer that's really characteristic of your music that you like to produce, having this all set up ready to go, just man, so much faster. And then just a couple other things here. Then I usually like to throw everything into a melodic area. That's actually weird that I threw that there. I'm gonna have to fix that. Yeah, so I don't want this here. But again, we have the compressor and with the K clip. Similar idea, but I'm gonna over here, I'm gonna switch to synths and keys when dialing that in, and then I just have an audio track and a MIDI track ready, just so that I can start building everything out, melodic information of the track. And this is set up so that standard channel strip is ready to go. I usually have this as the default, so removing that low end, and then having the side chain so that I could pump, and I have that set up with audio and MIDI, and this is also the default track I have. So if I right click and say insert audio track, you'll see that it has like the same setup. And if I go here, computer's about to die. If I do the same thing with the MIDI track, boom, the MIDI track also has that set up. So those moves that I'm going to make almost anytime, removing the lows and having it sidechaining at least a little bit, it's already there. And these things that I might do sometimes, playing with the transients or playing with the width, it's always there with like just have to turn it on basically. And it's turned off, so it's reducing the CPU. So that's nice. Last thing I think that I want to go over is the sends and returns. So I have the reverb here. I really love this Valhalla vintage reverb. It's just like the settings as it normally is, but the main thing that I do is I do like to change the decay so that it is going to quarter notes. And so this way you can dial in more reverb to your individual tracks because it is decaying in a musical way. So the reverb will hit, and then in a quarter note, the reverb is going to be gone. So it's making way for the next hit. So you're not getting that washed out, bad, unprofessional sound that you can get with too much reverb when you aren't dialing in the decay in a nice way like this. And so what I got recently was this time converter plugin, which I definitely saw on a video from Dilby, a really cool producer. Basically what this does is it'll have the BPM like routed, so what 128, and you can select what kind of like value you want, so quarter notes or half notes or whatever, and then it's going to show the time like in milliseconds equivalent. So if you look at 469 here, if I end up working on a song that's 120, it's going to change the value automatically, so I know that a quarter note is 504 milliseconds, so I can click into here and then I can kind of dial that in, and now it's once again going to a quarter note, which is really nice. I used to like actually look up a BPM reverb calculator, and so it's nice to have it automatically in here. It'd be cool if you can like map it to the actual decay here, but you can't, that I believe. But either way, cool, really efficient, love stuff like that. The next thing that we got going on is a short delay. So I'm using the Ableton Echo at an 8th note with like a slight adjustment with this little thing. You can make it sound a little bit like not so rigid, exactly an 8th note. Just feedback at 23%, dry wet all the way, which is something you always want to have the wet maxed out when you turns like this. And so that's one, and then the longer one is at quarter notes, again with a little bit of movement, so it's not perfect, filtering out a little bit, so it's only affecting the high above 125 hertz, and the feedback's longer, so 60%. And then, which I don't use all the time, I'm not gonna lie, I have this I got this free Chorus Juno plugin, just a chorus, and sometimes it can be nice to dial in some kind of chorus sound. Other than that, let's take a look at like the master. So on the master, what I like to have is this. So this is like an effects kind of module that I've almost built, and it's super simple. I have two endless smiles. The one is like more of a reverb washout, and then one has this like always rising kind of typical riser sound. And then I also have a auto filter here, so this way I can dial in that kind of washed out reverb sound on the master as like an effect. I can add in that riser sound easily as an effect, and then also I can do like kind of low pass kind of little tricks. So this is all very similar, almost like if you were DJing, you might cut the lows at a certain point. You might introduce some reverb or like a kind of like transitionary effect. This is all there, super fast, super easy. You can always replace them later with something a little bit more in depth, but this helps really kind of get that sound really quickly, which I then I have a couple things here. So then this is my mastering kind of setup. So I have it set up so there's this compressor here, again the Magic one, just so much easier. So I can set it up to, usually on the master I'll do synths, leave it on soft or gentle, and then listen to the whole thing, and then run it into K-clip once again, looking for about a decibel clipped. And then this is the mastering chain. So I've been turning this off in place of this little cool, it's also free by the way, I should mention, compressor, running into Gullfoss Master, which is like kind of an EQ, Magic EQ kind of thing. Can kind of fix some of the mistakes that I might have, make things sound a little bit cleaner. Kind of unnecessary, but kind of cool. And then the limiter, clipper, limiter kind of setup that I learned from my buddy Zach Adam. So what we're doing is we're running into the first limiter on the transparent style with true peak limiting off, and we're looking to just basically just adjust the gain, so you're getting about a decibel of gain reduction. Then running it into a clipper, we're again looking for about a decibel clipped once again. Oh, and then also should mention the Pro L2, the output is set to -1, and then we're running into the A clip. We're going for about a decibel clip, so you adjust the in or out. You adjust the in until you're getting about a decibel clipped here. Again, the ceiling's at -1, so we're reducing it by -1. And then we go into the last limiter where we have true peak limiting on, set to either aggressive or modern. Flick between them, decide which is best for you. I usually like the aggressive one. And then you're dialing the gain, so you're looking for about a decibel of reduction, and trying to get between -8, -9 is like pretty nice in terms of like the short-term LUFs. So having this at short term and then watching that. And then the last thing, which is really not useful for I guess anyone else, but I have this DP meter where I can set a reference level of -18 LUFs. I click this and it's going to drop the entire track down so that it's -18 LUFs, and this is just for when I'm recording like these like live stream. Yeah, that's a look at this. This is the product file, like the template that I always use for any tracks. Cool. Oh, cool. There's people watching. Yeah, I think let me know how this is, whether it's now or in like the replay. I might do more of these, maybe more like track feedbacks or like live little tutorials. I feel like it'd be cool if anybody has questions, like say you watch a video and I explain something and I don't go detail on it. I think this could be a cool opportunity for me to be like, okay, you talked about this, just blitzed by and I have no idea what you mean by it. Like I could actually take the time to flesh it out, stream like this, answer questions, and show things a lot more clearly. And yeah, let me know any feedback. Wouldn't mind getting better at this if it is useful. Because I feel like I sucked at this, but it is what it is. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'm gonna